1 year later, remembering the Western Mass tornado. Presented commercial-free by Hamden Bank.
Hello, I'm Rick DeBona, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Hamden Bank. It was just 1 year ago that communities throughout Western Massachusetts suffered the largest natural disaster in our history. The June 1st tornado took out trees like these in Court Square, many of which were hundreds of years old. It destroyed homes and it displaced hundreds of people in the Pioneer Valley, and it affected us all. The best news is we're rebuilding for the brighter days that lie ahead. Now, Hamden Bank is pleased to bring you this special commercial-free broadcast on CBS3 Springfield, looking back at that disaster and how our community is responding and rebuilding.
There were a number of rotational clouds that passed over us that day.
In Springfield or in the area, you know we're getting more thunderstorms right now.
We have a tornado warning in effect right now. You know,
It was really more of a tornadic outbreak than it was a tornado, except that, of course, the big EF3 tornado that touched down was the big kahuna that did all the damage.
Here's the Westfield police calling in saying, we confirm there was a touchdown in Westfield. So this is...
It was in the State House. We had just finished a business gathering in the Great Hall.
My wife Carla wanted to drop me off at City Hall.
I was at Sargent Ford in Agawam getting the oil changed in my car.
I had just swung back to my house in Agawam to pick up my wife.
And I was coming back to the office to get ready for the next thing. It was late in the day.
I just pulled out of the driveway, I don't know, about 4:15, and looked ahead of me, and the sky was this deep black with a greenish kind of tinge.
Looking up to the north there, West Springfield, and you got Riverdale, and a lot of folks, a lot of shops there. This is something that's a very dangerous situation.
It made me do a double take, but I thought, well, thunderstorm, it's, you know, we're getting into the warm weather, and so I was heading home about that time.
And as I was driving down my street, the winds almost blew my car off the road.
That, folks, unfortunately, is what a tornado does, and that is what we're looking at going right across West Springfield currently on camera, and this is something that is really bad news. So the folks here out on Riverdale and out in West Springfield, you do not want to be watching this broadcast right now unless you are doing it from your basement.
I drove down in front of the Big E and came up to the traffic circle on Route 5 and then headed north to Holyoke, not knowing that I passed through the path of the tornado about 5 minutes before it, approximately 5 or 10 minutes at the most, before it cut through that section.
My other daughter, Cassandra, had to get a prescription, so she said, do you mind watching Kiara for a half an hour?
And so I got home, clicked on the television, and saw the pictures of the tornado coming across the river.
There are cars on this bridge. This is a problem. We've been on the air for an hour now. You should know that this is something that is possible. You can see the debris hitting this camera as it goes down towards the south.
I was headed north on Route 5, you know, listening to the radio, blithely unaware of what was happening behind me.
This is a really bad situation. You really need to stay inside and aware.
My son was at work in Springfield, and so certainly we were just devastated trying to contact him and to figure out how to protect him.
I started to get the emergency paging and calls that we were getting hit by tornadoes.
My wife called and she said, honey, there's a tornado in Springfield.
Now take that and multiply it towards the city that we love and all of the people in the same situation he was in. So we immediately got on our knees and just started asking God to protect them.
Look at all the things that are being thrown up in the skies associated with it. This is something that is real. This is something that can really damage things. We could talk about shingles, we can talk about wood, we can talk about all sorts of things, but we could also talk about people. We do not want you to be out here in this, and this is going right through downtown Springfield as we speak.
A reporter, if I remember correctly, asked me, have you heard about the tornado?
I said, define tornado. Norma is sometimes given to hyperbole. And she said, honey, black spinning, Dorothy in Kansas, on the ground on TV right now.
And I had heard there was weather in Western Massachusetts, but I hadn't heard that tornado had touched down.
And I was stunned, just stunned. It didn't seem possible. I wanted to turn around and head back, but I knew that that wasn't a smart thing to do.
This is not Oklahoma City, this is Springfield. You think it's not supposed to happen here, but you know what? It is happening here.
God works in mysterious ways. This tornado hit at 4:37 p.m. If this tornado had hit at 2:37 p.m., all our children would have been in school.
Now, this is video that just came in about a half an hour ago, 40 minutes, of a school in Westfield. As you can see, everything is just tossed around off the desks.
There's a giant truck flipped over on Memorial Bridge. It looks like a train just came flying through, taking everything out. There's trees down. There's water spurting up from a building that looks like it was torn up across into West Springfield. There's just a lot of damage. There's traffic backed up for miles, trees down everywhere. There's people out of their cars. Everything seems really confusing. No one knows what to do.
If this hit at 4:37 a.m., we would all been asleep.
I've shown you this video from other states and other storms a lot of times, and there are programs on TV that people pop popcorn and sit down and take a look at because it's compelling video, and it is, but this is real. This is Westfield, this is Western Mass, this is an entire line across an incredible amount of population.
There are tornadoes in Oklahoma. They just ran along and ripped up some cornfields and whatnot, but when it comes down and touches down in a populated area, it's never a good thing.
The first 24 to 72 hours, we were in search and rescue.
I had spoken with the mayor of Springfield, the mayor of West Springfield, and the emergency management folks on the ground. And there was an unusual level of alarm.
It was so hot in here, we were literally dripping with sweat. And all of us were first responders. And we were frantically trying to get on our cell phones or the walkie-talkies. But cell phones, we were trying to contact our families, all the first responders, because we were on site, trying to tell them to hunker down, get in the basement, get safe. You couldn't get through to anybody.
You're listening for the data and the facts, and mindful that the facts are incomplete in the very early hours, but there was an unusual heightened alarm really in the tone of people's voices.
I would get the various update reports, and I would always ask, what's the count? What's the count? And they go, Mr. Mayor, nobody yet.
We were looking for questions, first of all, about what the injury or death had been, and trying to get a sense of that, and making sure that people were accounted for.
Frankly, I thought many, many more people would be killed when I heard that it had cut through the south end, and how is it not possible that there aren't hundreds of people dead? And I think a lot of people who were home watching it on television called their loved ones, or tweeted it, or popped it up on Facebook, and that just rippled through the community ahead of the storm.
That night, I walked around West Springfield, where a couple of buildings had been completely destroyed, and one of the fatalities had occurred. Just an incredible story about a mother who had put her 15-year-old in the bathtub and then climbed in on top of her to protect her, and did, but sacrificed her own life in the course of it. And that was the thing, you know, right next to buildings that were completely sound, untouched.
911, the signs recorded. What's your emergency?
A tornado just blew through here on Union Street.
Any damage to your building?
There's 2 houses down on the corner of George Street. There's people trapped.
We have a building that collapsed, 33 L Street.
My grandma was stuck in her cellar at 27 Globe Street.
Did the house collapse?
I believe it did.
We're in war zone mentality here. We got to deliver infrastructure alerts, where power outages are, where road closures are, who needs medical attention, where crews are going, because those are the things that the emergency management crews need to concentrate on right now.
You know, as in every disaster, it's a question of trying to get accurate information so that you can figure out what type of response is necessary. We knew we wanted the National Guard up in force just to help with you know, road clearance, with tree and debris removal, with traffic control because there were so many down power lines and so forth, and also with basic public safety support.
When it finally died down, we tried to get back into Springfield, but were denied access. However, we had people of our staff in Springfield.
Initially, the first challenge we had was to find out how bad it was and where it was bad. You know, we needed to identify the affected areas so that we could develop an educated estimate of what kind of resources we were going to need in order to respond. And
without knowing exactly what each of their missions would be, we just wanted to make sure we had plenty of people ready and moving.
There's going to be a lot of people looking for places to sleep tonight as well, so if you have neighbors that you are friendly with and you don't see a roof on their house, please...
Time to be friendly.
Time to be friendly, because we do have multiple reports of houses without roofs and partial collapses of schools, buildings, workplaces.
So folks in Palmer, folks in Munson, you saw what happened in Springfield, so you know what can happen to perhaps you in your house, next to windows. You don't want to be there. Living rooms, you don't want to be there. On the road, you definitely don't want to be there here. So Route 32, everybody's time to head inside and get to that safest place in your house, which is usually the basement. That's where you want to go.
Some people said to me, you know, well, that you had 15 minutes notice at best. What could you possibly do in that time? Well, get away from glass, get downstairs, take some kind of cover. Obviously, people did.
People just, they just couldn't believe what had happened and how quickly it had happened. There was almost no warning.
And it took a while for us all to understand the scope of it, especially east of Springfield. I mean, what happened in Brimfield and Munson, you know, those communities have far fewer resources. They took a heavy hit from this storm.
Okay, we got viewer confirmation of a tornado in Munson. Same storm. We were telling you about it before. We were telling you about it during. And hopefully everybody was downstairs and in the basement when it happened.
Everybody who got hit by this thought, well, it happened here. We're the ones who took it on the chin, when in fact so many of us took it on the chin that day.
You know, I think the things that were striking, first of all, the shock among people that something this profound could happen this quickly. And do this much damage.
My police officer was saying, hey, Mayor, hey, Don, will you look at that? And because the electrical lines are buried down in the downtown area, buildings were shredded in half or worse. But yet, television sets were on and lights were on.
We were going to be entering into a sheltering mass care operation. For us, mass care means feeding, sheltering, and attending to basic human needs, potentially for large numbers of people. And as it turned out, in excess of 3,000 people were affected by the storm. The storm was, you know, like a quarter-mile wide, but it was 39 miles long, cutting through populated areas. So,
2 hours after the storm ended, we had our mobile feeding units with food, water, supplies, trying to make their way through the streets.
I was taking phone calls in the Mass Mutual Center at 9 o'clock that night, which is what, barely 4.5 hours after the storm, from our national headquarters saying, we're sending an APAT team to you, which is an advanced public affairs team. We're sending trucks to you, we're sending a satellite truck, we're sending this, that, and the other. Stuff that resources we don't possess here in Western Mass.
At the time I had ordered fire and police. There was the routine checks 24/7. And I remember people saying to me, we were never so happy to have people, you know, police and fire knocking on our door every 2 hours, doing a search and rescue, making sure you were okay.
They couldn't drive hardly anywhere. And so they started just roaming up and down the streets, climbing over things and checking on people. Were there folks who had medical issues, who needed ambulances? Were there people who were stranded somewhere? And how could the Salvation Army help them?
It had to be near 1:30 in the morning to comfort them. Everything's going to be okay. Sometimes that's what people need, that arm around somebody's shoulder. Things are going to be okay. We're here for you.
I would say to them, how are you doing? And almost without exception, and the words are almost the same as well, they would say, I feel blessed. And they meant it. They're standing in front of their damaged or destroyed home, and they feel blessed. And I knew exactly what they meant. They feel blessed because they're alive, because their family is alive, because their neighbors are okay.
It was extraordinarily quiet. Do you remember how bright it was the next day and clear? Just this incredible calm after this extraordinary destruction.
I went home to check on my family, and we probably got an hour or a couple hours sleep. And people had told me, Mayor, you're not going to recognize Island Pond Road area, the wrath, devastation of that tornado.
Walked around downtown Springfield and got, right from the Courtyard Square, I think it is, right across from City Hall, with these massive trees were turned upside down.
Court Square, in the historic First Church, was the gathering place for the birth of Springfield. I walked out to see those trees, somewhere well over 300 years old, just flopped around like dominoes.
And then down the street into the neighborhood south of downtown, which was just wrecked.
Good Morning America, the Today program, CBS Morning News, South American media, Japanese media. It was unreal.
And then when we got up in the air and followed the path of this 40-mile-long scar, it just took your breath away.
The next day, when people came outside and stood and just looked at the devastation and tried to gather their minds, they weren't thinking about food. They weren't thinking about how to recover. They were just trying to figure out, what do we do? Where do we go from here?
In Munson, the whole town center was demolished. The steeple of the church, of one of the churches downtown, was in the church front yard. Just wondering how they were going to get their lives back together, and wondering, I think, how much help there was going to be.
We started to mobilize units that would literally be out there handing, because people didn't have access to a computer, to a phone, to a television set or a radio, to hand out the information where they could go for help or what help was coming their way.
Let's face it, if you weren't affected directly by the tornado, you know someone who was, right? You either work with them or it's like one or two steps removed. It affected so many of us.
I must say that when we sat down in Munson and walked around Bethany Road and visited with people, I remember meeting a couple whose house was completely demolished, who had just made the last mortgage payment on their house. There was another family whose house had been moved off of its foundation. It was intact, but was going to have to be demolished, but just completely moved off the foundation. And they were carrying things out from the refrigerator for a graduation party for their daughter, who was supposed to graduate in the following week. I met a couple who were sitting on the stoop of their house, and that was all that was left. I think she said they found the living room sofa several blocks away, and the checkbook register, her checkbook register, was recovered in the town of Milton, where I live, 80 miles away. I mean, just incredible.
I love this city, and I like to look at the good of the city. I know, like other urban centers across America, we face our challenges. But I think people thought at that time it was time to turn out the lights in the city of Springfield. the exact opposite happened.
The neighbor-to-neighbor response was just, it was beautiful. It was something to behold.
We all did something to help. We wrote checks, we donated food, we volunteered our time.
Neighbor helping neighbor, people working together, people now, friendships that will continue to evolve or even be even strengthened because of what happened.
You know, I learned how important a bologna sandwich was. As we were able to bring food to them, bologna sandwiches, bottles of water, diapers for children, formula for children.
I went out on one of the feeding vehicles. I would hop out of the truck and it would open the back doors and the smell of a hot breakfast would roll out into a devastated neighborhood, and people would come from all corners. You'd look at the neighborhood and you say, there's nobody here, and when you stop the truck and open the doors, you'd see a head pop up and you'd see somebody come from behind a building, and they were there trying to reclaim possessions or button up a damaged but not destroyed home. And they'd come to the back of a truck, and the first thing they would do is stand and smell the breakfast, just kind of drink it in, you know, because if you've been out working and you're uncomfortable and you're hungry, and then when that smell of a hot breakfast hits you, it's one of those beautiful, simple pleasures.
Gloves. We went through thousands of pairs of work gloves because people were out there trying to remove these big things from their yard and brush, etc. And we would pull up and say, would you like a pair of gloves? And they thought we'd have handed them a $1,000 check because finally they could have some comfort to continue their tasks.
And the ways in which people in the community, set aside their own personal recovery to come and offer some encouragement or food or a glass of water to folks who were helping them recover. All of that was inspirational, and I think I took every opportunity to call that out that I could, as did others, because it was a source of reassurance and real strength for people as they were working their way through all of this.
We were dealing at times with 350 people all living in one big room at the Mass Mutual Center. We were dealing with people in their neighborhoods where they've lost everything, where they have no power, where now it's hot. Remember, we had hot weather right after the tornado, and the amount of friction that we saw was minuscule. I don't even remember very much of it. Most of it was kindness and collegiality and patience and helping other people.
There's a young woman in Munson who created a website, might have been a Facebook page, so that people could put requests for things they needed and also find out, those who wanted to volunteer, find out what kinds of requests they could meet. So there was a sort of a clearinghouse of information. It was brilliant.
Hands were not thrown up, oh, woe is me, what are we going to do? There was a plan of attack. This is what is occurring. This is what all our specialists in public safety are doing right now. Nick Russo, Chief Russo, who was the head of the whole FEMA area here, came in and he said, I've been to 72 disaster sites across the country, and Springfield someday will be used as an example how to properly handle a disaster. He said that, and he said that publicly too. That accolade really said a lot, that we shined in the time of adversity.
You know, it's amazing. A year is not long. And in that time, all or most of the cleanup is complete. Much of that in short order. Much of life is back to normal. The Munson High School graduation was postponed a week, but it happened, and those young people are off to pursue their dreams and plans.
Governor Patrick and I'll never forget, it was the first week. It was a late Sunday afternoon, early evening. He called me. Tom, I want to come in and see another neighborhood area. And we were in the fringe of East Forest Park, Island Pond Road, General Edwards Bridge, and the Triangle area there. And as we were walking to that press conference to give an update, almost in unison, I'll never forget, we said, you know, Don, he said, Don, nobody wants these storm clouds, but two silver linings are going to come out of this. One, the resiliency of the Springfield people, was absolutely tremendous. That kept us going 24/7. And two, the economic development, monetary assets that will come to the city of Springfield.
We've always worked together, Salvation Army and Red Cross, but I don't think we've ever been as close as we are today. We were thrown together, ironically, by Channel 3 in a fundraising venture that you put together that brought us together. And Tom Perks and I ended up standing downtown when you were shooting the check handoff. And I said to Tom, you know, it's really been great working with your people. Your people have been terrific to us. And he said, me too. And I said, wouldn't it be great if we just keep this going? And he said, yeah, I'm all for that. And we have, you know, and I don't mean to say we had a bad rapport before. We didn't. It was a fine working rapport, but it's much closer today.
Proud. People want to knock the city all the time, and I just feel the glass is half full. People need to start to be bullish on the city of Springfield. I'm sure we have our urban challenges, but just when you thought, boy, Springfield is just taking too many haymakers now, they're never going to come back. Like I said, the exact opposite happened.
I hope that we will seize the opportunity, particularly in Springfield, West Springfield, some of the urban centers that were affected, to rebuild better and to do that with a real plan. I'm sorry to say we have been through this a few times since I've been governor, but nothing really quite like the tornado.
From the devastation of June 2011 to today, we are rebuilding, reconnecting with our neighbors and supporting those in need. We hope this look back has given everyone in our community inspiration. On behalf of everyone at Hamden Bank, we wish you brighter days ahead. Thank you.